Didn't see you there. My name is Pepper, odd salon fellow and general professional eccentric. I am now up to day 8 of the New York quarantine. Huzzah, huzzah, sis, boom, bah. I'll drink to that. Last time we did this, I read you a delightful, bizarre short story by Leonora Carrington. And by popular belief, I figured it'd be good to go with Max Ernst next. And that seems to be what my 4 interviewers kind of want to read about. So, what do you know about Max Ernst? Well, Max Ernst was a male surrealist artist who was also put into internment camps, is known for his paintings, his sculpture, as well as being a participant in both the Dada and the Surrealist movement. But what you might not know about Max Ernst is that he slept with everything. Everything. Often, always, and sometimes in multiple situations with multiple partners. That having been said, there's a delightful book that came out a few years ago in which I'm going to read an excerpt from for you tonight. This is Surreal Lovers by Margaret Hooks, which is exquisite, licentious, and downright smutty in a wonderful art historical way, in which it explains the relationships with all of the women in his life, including Gala Allard, who would later become Dali's main squeeze, Mary Oppenheim, Leonora Carrington, Peggy Guggenheim of Guggenheim Museum fame, Dorothea Tanning, and Leonore Feeney, who is an exquisite creature, and we'll read more about her next time. But to get started, a couple of starting off points. To give you a better idea, Max Ernst was pretty hot to trot back in the day. He's a rather attractive looking dude that was attractive to both men and women alike. So let's give you some examples. For starters, this is what Max Ernst looked like as a young man. This is one of his collages from when Dada was a thing. And then this is a subsequent self-portrait that Leonora Carrington had done of him during their brief liaison. And although it was a tumultuous affair that lasted several years, compared to some of his other relationships, it was mighty short. But anyway, this is Max in the accoutrement costume of Lop Lop, his psychic and kind of animagus, for you Harry Potter fans, alter ego. He was known as essentially like a bird personified. This is the picture that becomes very important in just a little bit. The gentleman with the little boy on his shoulders is Max, and then the lady with the plaid dress at the end is his wife at the time, and then the couple in the middle is what's really important. Not to mention the little boy on his shoulders is Jimmy Ernst, whose memoirs I'm reading right now, and I have mixed feelings, but that's a different conversation. This is a family holiday that would lead to a polyamorous relationship. That having been said, let's dive in. Before Leonora Carrington, Max was in essentially a 3-way romantic, artistic, and sexual relationship with Paul Allard and Gala, later named Dali. That's the T. With that in mind, I'm going to read, again, Surreal Lovers, look it up, fabulous book. When the Allards appeared on the doorstep of number 14 Kaiser Wilhelm Ring, looking for Max Ernst, he and Louise, that's the wife, knew little about them. Gala was a total unknown, but Max was somewhat familiar with Paul's poetry through the avant-garde literary magazines. Of the most interest and relevance was the poet's expressed admiration for his collages and desire to see more of his work. Desperately short of cash, Max was keen to sell some of his paintings in hope that the affluent Allard might be tempted to buy. In preparation, he had just completed his largest painting so far, and all 22 square feet of it was sitting in his studio waiting for it to dry. I have to show you what it looks like because it's just daring and fabulous. And there's naked people. It's so much easier to illustrate things when you have visual aids. I'll learn how to zoom next week. This is the painting in question, which I'm sure many of you have actually seen. The Célèbre Elephant, as it is called, retained elements of the Dada in its collage components, but its hallucinatory dreamlike imagery, which was a portent of the surrealism in waiting in the wings. While the painting revealed the influence of Giorgio de Chirico, whom Max revered at the time. It is a uniquely Ernst work in its execution and vision. ... In an almost empty sky, or was it the sea, flying fish pursue one another out of the blue. What appears to be a plane trailing smoke heads for a crash. Some art historians have claimed that these references to the mechanical terror of the war experience that Max knew firsthand from his time working in the artillery during the war. The painting was also one of the names of the Indonesian islands, and Ernst later said that the title of the painting came from a bawdy German rhyme. Visually exciting, simultaneously humorous and ominous celebs paid tribute to the French critics who said Max Ernst could not paint. Paul Ehrlich loved the painting and immediately offered to buy it, and that was just the beginning. He also bought another work of his, Oedipus Rex, as well as 11 collages to illustrate his forthcoming volume of poetry, Repetition, scheduled for publication within the next few months. Spirits were high among the new friends. The visitors were thrilled to have discovered such a great artist and acquire some of his work. The Ernsts were delighted that, in addition to Max finally getting some appreciation for his work, the purchases provided a welcome respite from their financial woes. Both couples wanted to celebrate by having a good time, going out on the town, and Max and Louise were eager to introduce the Allards to their friends and show them their city. The men bundled up against the November chill in long coats and Homburg hats, and the women put on their most stylish winter clothes. A snapshot taken in the center of Cologne shows Gala in a dark fur coat and a Russian-style hat, standing beside Max, who was arm in arm with Louise, dressed in elegant white ensemble, trimmed at hem and collar with black fur, her hands buried in a large, fleecy muff. After their sightseeing forays, they would meet up with their fellow Dadaists, the Rothschneiders and the Harls, I'm probably saying that wrong, don't sue me, and headed to the restaurants and the nightclubs. They even went to the circus and the fairground and visited an exhibition of the work of the American artist Man Ray, whom Gala and Paul knew quite well. Back at the apartment in the evening, the merriment continued as they drank, danced to music on the gramophone, and conversed well into the small hours of the morning. Max and Paul talked of their proximity to each other during the war, when only a few hundred meters of hell separated them. The realization that one could have so easily been inadvertently killed, the other cemented the instantaneous bond between both men. Then they were linked by the flow of blood that crisscrossed the battlefield. Now that they had met, this same blood tie served to unite them again. Max felt that in the French poet he had found someone who truly understood the essence of his work and shared his fantasies, and appreciated his extraordinary imaginative powers. A mutual love of poetry further contributed to their friendship, and they improvised verses together and discussed collaborative book projects. Images from the time capture the couple's growing intimacy. Joined Bargeld and Jimmy, they fool around for the camera with carved masks, shawls, and contorted faces. In one, Max appears at Gala's side, and Louise has her arm around Paul's shoulders as he balances Jimmy on his knee. In another, in an atypical expression of familiarity between the two, Gala rests her head on Louise's lap while she strokes her hair. The two women were so unalike, both in character and appearance, that they were virtual polar opposites. Louise, short, blonde, curvaceous, and blue-eyed. Gala, tall, slim, brunette, and dark-eyed. Habitually silent, cold, and self-contained, Gala had no need of female friends or confidants. Oh no. Louise, warm and effusive, enjoyed the company of women and reached out to that other woman, but soon realized that she was totally disinterested in any camaraderie from her. Gala's attention was focused and fixated on the two men and their work. She made herself increasingly essential to their collaboration, so Louise was gradually sidelined. The quartet became a trio, +1, or +1.5, as Jimmy, their son, also became the peripheral. During their stay, Max made a sexually explicit collage called Approaching Puberty, and inscribed it to Gala, perhaps his way of thanking her for having posed bare-breasted for one of his paintings. Paul's acquiescence to her doing so was understandable. He was enthralled with his new friend, and reluctant to deny him anything. Moreover, nudity was commonplace to him. He carried a small Man Ray photo of a naked Gala in his wallet, and proudly displayed it to friends who inquired after his wife. Gala was not recognizable in Max's painting, Perturbation, My Sister, because the woman in it is headless. Isn't that just always the way? But the intriguing title may refer to the inevitable discord and distress he knew would result from his desire for the wife of his blood brother. Louise and Paul's reaction to the incident has not been documented, but the subsequent events indicate that it signified the breaking of a taboo that made Max and Gala's sexual attraction evident to both their partners. Louise was certainly hurt as a result, but Paul seemed to have an almost salacious interest in seeing how far the flirtation would go. That Max and Gala actually had sex together during this visit to Cologne is unclear. It would have been difficult to conceal from Paul and Louise. Neither made any reference to in subsequent writings. However, some years later, during one of the Surrealist questionnaires sessions, everybody present was asked to recount their emotional sexual experience since losing their virginity. Max responded that his had been during 1921 with a woman he then believed he loved intensely. After having wasted the opportunity to sleep with her the previous evening, he decided his abstinence had been an error and he had sex with her promptly the next day. The Allard's lengthy stay was coming to an end, and enthusiastic plans were made for the friends to meet again in January. This time, Louise and Max would travel to Paris and be guests at their home in the suburb of St. Brice. In the meantime, the two men would continue to work on their collaborative projects. On a bitterly cold Saturday morning, Paul and Gala boarded the train back to Paris, and the following day Max wrote to Zara to tell him their new friends had left and he and Louise were feeling a bit down at their departure. He was speaking for himself, not the wife, who had found the Allard's extended visit a strain that left her emotionally and physically exhausted. She later described this period in their lives as a, quote, strange time. A time when the Cologne Dadaists, especially Ernst and Bargeld, became the avant-garde's favorite of the Parisian group, when Breton, Allard, Perret, and Zara all made the pilgrimage to Cologne, and there was a lot of late-night dancing and drinking in the clubs. After all the guests had departed, she and Max were left to their own resources, and things took a different turn. Quote, alone, just the two of us, we continued to dance or drink, both acts of despair. We saw something approach us, against which we were defenseless, end quote. It was not just a coincidence, she concluded, that this something increasingly became, quote, the figure of the stealthy, lascivious Russian, end quote. Nevertheless, she acknowledged that other elements contributed to the estrangeness between her and Max. A change had occurred with the birth of Jimmy, and she regretted having given up her position at the museum, because she was, quote, not a mother hen. 10 days later, he had learned from Max, this is Paul, had learned from Max that Louise was in the hospital in Dusseldorf, and their visit to Paris would have to be postponed. Within a week, she had recovered from a sudden illness, and then there were problems with their French visas, and the Ernst would not be going to Paris after all. Instead, when Repetitions, with Max's collages and 49 of Allard's poems, were printed in March, he and Gala packed their suitcases, added several copies of the book, and headed to the apartment on Kaiser Wilhelm Ring for an even longer stay than the previous one. The two men were ecstatic at the reunion, and their fraternal relationship resurged. I am no longer an only child, Allard wrote to Zara on the postcard that Gala and Max also signed. The drawing Max added was a none too subtle reference to his affair with Gala. In it, a nude female torso lies alongside the head of a large bird. During their time apart, Paul had written a poem for Max that appeared in the first pages of the new collaborative volume. This enigmatic poem, titled simply Max Ernst, begins with the line, in a corner, agile incest, and contains the first of several allusions in Allard's work to an incipient anxiety about his and Max's fraternal sharing of Gala, the object of their mutual desire. The short, 3-stanza poem goes on to describe a coming storm, and with it the arrival of the, quote, fish of anguish in the brightest corner of every eye. The last line alludes to a woman who has bared her breasts, most likely a reference to the November visit to Cologne, when Gala posed bare-breasted for Max. Obviously, the incident had a deeper effect on the poet than he had indicated at the time. The sexual liaison between Max and Gala was now evident to both partners. It was time of great anguish for Louise, who had been reduced to a mere observer of the events she could no longer control. There was an effort on the part of Gala to push her and Paul into each other's arms to justify the affair with Max. Paul was an attractive man, tall, elegant, and dignified, gentle disposition, and Louise liked him, but neither he nor she were interested in an affair. When that failed, Louise later recalled, Gala just kept both men and left her to her own resources, relying on her innate optimism that things would eventually work out. She did her best to brave and broad-minded go along with the Dada free love maxim. Pick it up, read it, learn something. We have the time. Thank you for listening. Happy quarantine. Pick up a copy of Surreal Lovers, and until next week, stay sane, stay weird, stay safe, and stay the frig inside.